we are a town which has some grave problems. We have lots of poverty. We have lots of social neighborhoods here in Olhão.
Temos muitos alunos que são provenientes de agregados familiares, de famílias com muitos problemas socioemocionais. Temos alunos cujos pais estão detidos, as mães.
They sometimes don't have parents that can give you the comfort or can give you sometimes something to eat, and they are there in the classroom.
Por isso é que foi criado um projeto de território educativo de intervenção prioritária. Nós nesta escola tínhamos alunos com problemas de comportamento, com alunos muito agressivos. Eles não sabiam como é que deveriam estar numa sala de aula, eles não respeitavam o outro, não se respeitavam entre eles e não respeitavam o professor.
Eu penso que nós não podemos ignorar que a Europa está em profunda mudança e naturalmente que essas mudanças refletem-se também ao nível da educação. E penso também que as escolas, seja em que parte da Europa for, têm todas elas problemas. Podem alguns ser idênticos, outros diferentes, mas todas as escolas têm problemas. Face a esses problemas é necessário agir, procurar soluções realmente efetivas.
Eu antigamente era uma criança mais nervosa, era daqueles de ofender os colegas, metia-me com o pessoal. Mas desde que comecei a fazer meditação, parece que comecei a acalmar, parece que outra pessoa me sinto mais relaxado, mais livre. Olho para as coisas com outra claridade, com outros olhos. Aprendi muita coisa.
Tinha muito baixa autoestima e era muito negativo. Estava sempre a desvalorizar-me. Felizmente a meditação apareceu na minha vida e tudo mudou completamente.
Com a implementação deste projeto, nós sentimos que a nossa escola, os nossos alunos, têm vindo a melhorar progressivamente.
O projeto Europe apresenta-se como uma ferramenta realmente extraordinária porque o programa Tempo de Silêncio é fácil de implementar, é simples e realmente traz-nos resultados concretos e isso pode-se ver a vários níveis.
Professores, vocês já repararam que têm nas vossas mãos a melhor matéria-prima que existe? São os nossos alunos, é o ser humano. Vamos fazer com que esses seres humanos sejam as melhores pessoas da amanhã. E temos um projeto inovador, no qual acreditamos é uma ferramenta poderosíssima que muda comportamentos, atitudes das pessoas.
Good morning, everybody. We are so glad to see this room full of people. And we wanted to start with some experiences that are gathered from the Europe project. Then for sure we will have the opportunity to go into the different experiences and results of this project. And we are here because the Europe project is going to end. But as I used to say, a project is like launching a ship, a boat. You, during the project lifetime, the supported period, you have to create the boat. And then the boat has to go by its own with some sailors, but we have sailors now because we have a lot of teachers that are trained on this technique. And so it's very important to start saying that it's not the finish of the project, it's the start of a new experience. I'm here because I belongs to the coordinating organization, which is Foundational Garden Franchetti Centro Studi Villa Montesca, and I'm very glad that the partners chosen me to be a moderator of this conference. It's a challenging and very emotional experience from my side. And we are here because anyway, we would like to show you what we have done during these 2-year projects and what we would we would like to do from now on. Europe project is a project supported by the EACIA of the European Commission. And at this regard, I really would like to thank Ms. Karin de Kelvre, who is our project officer and who gave us support during this 2-year project. She is with us, and that would say that, that she cares about this project. So thank you very much, Karen, to be with us. And it was supported under the key action 3, social inclusion through education. Actually, our project wanted to prevent radicalization, wanted to promote intercultural understanding and dialogue, want to promote active citizenship and democratic value. Europe used an original, let's say unconventional, and also pioneering learning center method based on quiet time transcendental meditation for promoting the psychological and psychosocial well-being of our students, of our teacher, or of the school environment, and also of the community which is around the school. I don't go deeper in the actions of the project because they will be fully analyzed together with all of you during this morning. But I would like to say that this approach that comes from, let's say, far away, was so attractive also from an organization like our organization, which is a small organization placed in the center of Italy with a very interesting history. It was the history of education and also the approach that we use in the project is linked to the history of form of educations that can be joined to the story of Villa Montesca, where the Maria Montessori method was written, where our organization, the name of our organization is Foundation Al Garden Franchetti Villa Montesca. Al Garden Franchetti were the ancestors of our organization, and they pioneered innovations in several fields, mainly the social and the educational fields. And Alice Al Garden was attracted also by the Vedic culture, by the inner comprehension of the self. And so when the Maharishi Foundation asked us to make this sort of marriage, we took this occasion as an occasion that could allow us to go forward also thinking about our past. And that really was. I just would like also to say that, to thank all the partners of this project. It was a very huge partnership, actually. It is a huge partnership. We are 12 partners from 5 European countries, And all the partners deeply worked in reaching the goal on the ground, and that's amazing for European project, to work on the ground, to have care of the children, of the teacher, to leave them something that they can use for the rest of their life. This is incredible from my point of view. That's why this project was very lively project, is a lively project that's going to live again and again. I would like also to thank some public authorities in all our countries. We tried also to involve public authorities to make them aware of the process we were implementing. At this regard, for instance, I would like to thank Yvette Zivedo, which is in this room, and she's the representative of the Ministry of Education in Portugal. And really she supported the project together with some other representative in the other countries involved or other ministries. So thank you really for the support and the care about this project. And I don't want to. Thank you. I don't want to waste time because there are a lot of things to do. Let me just express a special thank to Mirta Castellaro and Stefano Mancin, who are the leader of the implementation of the project, for the support, the strong commitment, the passion, the involvement that they put on this project. And let me also remember Richard Scott, who started this project with us. And I give the floor to the coordinator of the project, Fabrizio Boldrini, for the introduction, and is also my director, the director of the Foundation Villa Montesca. Thank you very much, and hoping that this day should be a profitable day for all of us. Thank you.
So thank you very much, of course, for this wonderful organization, also the CESI organization that made this possible. And I would like just to introduce in brief some points related to our project and the motivation of our project that is in the framework of the European policies addressed to promote social inclusion. I would like just to say that yesterday, just to express my thought relating to the life we would like to meet during the project, I saw some kids, some children sleeping in the street with their parents around the Grand Place to prepare for Christmas time. So I thought what is normal to feel. I don't know if you remember Bertolt Brecht, the popular comedian, that said, why I have to write plays of theater if these kids are real poor? How can I? And so how can we prepare projects if we go to the Grand Place and we see children sleeping outside? And I don't have any answer, actually, but I feel that we have to rethink a bit the concept of social inclusion that is wider than including people in poverty, in disability situations of disability in a wonderful place that we call school. And so this is the word we try to promote in this project. You know that we are receiving now, according to the independent consortium of journalists, 1,500 foreign fighters, so people, young people, students that decide to go somewhere far away to fight, prefer to have a rifle than a book. And so they are coming back. So my question is why they decide to do this. Are they, all of them are really poor? All of them are in social conditions? No, I don't think so. Looking through their lives, I see that there are some normal people with a background of immigration and with middle-class families. So what we need to avoid that this kind of people decided to go through radicalization instead of reading poetry or Bertolt Brecht or whatever. And I think that the problem is that our school is not so attractive that it deserves. So we have to do something to make our school more attractive. And in the way of promoting an attractive learning, but also in the way to recall what Maria Montessori said, the learning environment should be simple. And as being simple, I think we are mentioning a complicated word. Simple is not simple sometimes. So, and we create a lot of technologies, magic techno boards, apps, whatever. But I don't think that Maria Montessori would have been happy to see so many technologies without a thinking, an inner thinking about the motivation of our learning and the motivation of our knowledge that we have to acquire. And this project try to answer to this simple indication. How can we be simple? Recuperating somehow some ideas that come from far away, from a very, very old wisdom, and it's simple. 50 minutes, quiet time. No technologies, no things, no magic boards, no stupid people speaking like me, and just sitting, thinking, but simple is sometimes difficult. So we need to reach the state of simpleness through a technique. And this is the idea of our project, promoting this technique that is simple and can be adopted all over Europe by all the schools without thinking of their religion, personal ideas or whatever. And I think that Montessori said another concept that we need to explore. Exploration was one of the strong concepts of the Montessori method. Exploration is not just going around the world to see things, but also giving to our mind the opportunity to explore its potentialities. And this is the way, in promoting exploration in school, we can promoting also attractiveness. I think in a school where the kids are allowed to explore also in their mind, using their mind, is an attractive schools. We have a lot of studies about it also at the scientific level, but we are not sure that we really understand what we mean with this concept of exploring things. That's why we have the net, of course. The internet can give us a lot of information, but this project teaches us that we have to go through a critical approach also to this information. Exploring not means just seeing things, but living things, living knowledge. And I think that our effort was in this direction. And the last concept was that the learning environment has to be prepared. What means prepared is a very strong word that Montessori stressed many times. Being prepared means that we have to act in a learning environment promoting first the well-being of the kids. It's easy to say, but sometimes, you know that we have, our school system is based on a concept of a productive organization. And this is something that can give us hints to think. Productive organization means that we have to sit in front of the teacher, and what we are required to do is know more than possible, knowing more than possible, acquiring competencies for the future work in a circular idea that first you go to school, then you will have a future job, maybe. Now in my country it's quite difficult. And so now that the so-called social lift is blocked, I don't think that my sons will be able to think that they can get more than me in their life, the future life. So the motivation now is not like 10 years ago. So what we have to do, I think, is to reflect that this model, this productive model of this educative organization is not what we think. Not we have to think in educative terms. So we have to promote well-being. I think that the school is a place where it's possible to be happy, I think. I would like to dream in the future when people come to school and say, oh, that's my really, really good place. I will stay here. My son have a different thought, I think, but and so this is a first step. Do we think that we our project we have definitely solved all the things? No, for sure. We need more investigation, more thinking, more exploitation, more experimentation. But we will look to this project in terms of sustainability. And sustainability is a tough word somehow. I would like to finish my contribution to say that this is an Italian proverb that say we switch off the light and we say goodbye. So I mean, when the party is finished, goodbye and we go. And I don't think that the project has to be lived that way. I think that we had the opportunity to share in this that is not a consortium. I will assure you it's a community of people and a community of friends that believe in the application of this concept that I mentioned to you. And now we have, after 2 years of experimentation, after 2 years of investigations, I think we have all the tools for starting really the project in the future, for promoting more and more this technique on the idea that the school is a place where we need to assure the well-being of the kids, because a place where it's possible to be happy. Thank you very much.
Would like to say to you that in the program you see that before starting speaking about what is quiet time and transcendental meditation, another speech was planned. Laura Gea, an Italian member of the European Parliament, was scheduled, but unfortunately, yesterday, the Italian Prime Minister, who is from the same movement, came in Brussels, and the agenda of Ms. Agea changed. She cares a lot about the project, so she told us, I will do my best to come maybe later, maybe almost at the end of the conference. And so, anyway, we'll wait for her. And also because she knows the project and the actions that we managed, and she cares a lot about the future of this project. We will speak about the general overview of the project implementation. And I would like to give the floor to two of the main protagonists of the Euro project, Franz Van As and Mirta Castellaro. Franz is a professor was a professor at the School of Economics here in Brussels, and now is at University of Leuven. And Mirta is an expert and teacher of Transcendental Meditation. So sorry, and I, with a lot of pleasure, give you the floor.
Thank you, Maria Rita. So what I'm going to talk about is, let's say, the root cause of radicalization, and also a little bit about the background of this call. And so what was already introduced is, let's say, the project itself. But I would like to say something more about the background of the call. And a call is a call for proposals, to which you submit a proposal. But there was a background to this. And that had to do with some negative terrorist events, like in Denmark, in Paris, the attacks on Charlie Hebdo, the Bataclan in Brussels, in Zaventem here. And so what the ministries of education already in 2015 came together, and they said, we have to do something. And they recognized that education is actually a factor that can be helpful here. Similarly, we see that UNESCO also say it's clear that the strategic solution to violent extremism lies inter alia, in education. And the Commission therefore included in the call for proposal a general objective that Maria Rita already said, that we are actually tackling violent radicalization through prevention and then promoting democratic values and so on. And what I'm going to talk about is then, against this background, how we actually approach this. Because there are actually different strategies. And here I have actually categorized the different strategies. You have repression, shielding, stop bad influences, promote good influences, and self-balancing. So let's have a look at that. Repression, the problem is that the violence has already happened. And so you're not preventing anything. The damage has been done. Lives lost, there are traumatic experiences. And by the way, I'm using here extremism and terrorism, but in general, let's say the project is addressing any violence and what can be done in the educational setting. If we then look at the preventative approaches, so the other ones are preventative approaches. And the first preventative approach that I would consider is shielding. And shielding, we know that you came also in this building through metal detectors, police, soldiers in the street, guards, intelligence agencies, private security firms, and so on. The problem with those is, of course, they are shielding, but they are not really addressing the root cause of the problem. Then there are, let's say, approaches that stop bad influences or try to stop bad influences. And this is, for instance, block hate sources, block the internet, use of social workers to block those negative influences, etc. The next one is then promote good influences, and this is typically also where the European Commission already went, because this list is actually coming from the call, like, for instance, improving the acquisition of social and civic competences, and so on. So it means that in education, there is, in the schools, debate on tolerance, on citizenship, good citizenship, and so on. However, we are quite happy that the Commission also accepted some other approach, which is going a bit further. Instead of understanding tolerance, good citizenship, and so on, the technique that we are using, it's not to talk about and to understand and discuss tolerance and good citizenship. It's actually becoming tolerant and a good citizen and so on. And it is achieved by addressing really the root cause of this violence and radicalization, the stresses and strains, the frustrations, the feelings of humiliation, and so on. What we want in every school, so to speak, is that official school evaluations would say the following. And this is actually coming from the school of Derek. It's a 2017 evaluation by Ofsted, which is the official independent watchdog in the UK for education. And they are visiting every so many years schools, and they also visited a school in Skelmersdale, where Derek is former director, I believe. And they said the following about what they were seeing. Children behave well and show respect for each other. They understand about taking turns and helping when classmate is struggling or upset. Pupils' attitudes and behavior are outstanding. They are very keen to learn, they listen well, and are able to express their careful, considered views respectfully. Pupils care for each other and make a major contribution to ensuring that their school is cohesive, safe, and orderly. Pupils are happy and content. So Fabrizio's wish is already here that pupils can be content. So this is the introduction to set the scene a little bit, to set the stage a little bit of the root cause, as we perceive it, of violence and radicalization, and how we address this. Thank you very much.
This overview of the project implementation is going to be fostered by the speech of Mirta Castellaro, so to have a real view of the root base of the implementation of the Europe project.
Thank you very much for being here. And I just know also, having an overview of the registration, that there are also schools coming from different countries, from Spain, institutions from France and Germany. So really, thank you everyone and to all the partners. We just wanted to give a view of what happened during the project and basically who we reached. So we start at the beginning with numbers, and it just is much more than that. So students we reached during the project are 575 students. That means that participated to this program, Quiet Time with Transcendental Meditation. It's a program that includes 15 minutes at the beginning and at the end of the school day of the practice of this very simple technique and very effective, that is Transcendental Meditation. And it's an old school approach. So the next number is the school teachers and staff that we reach, that are 350. Being an old school approach, we first are approaching principal and training, principal and leadership of the school, and then the teacher and staff. Then we also offer the program to parents, and then we arrive to students. So in here, these 350 are not only teachers of school that already implement with the children in this project, but are also seeds of the future. So our parents that have learned, and they want us teachers that have learned, and they want to implement it in the future in their school. And then we have 77 parents. We had as partner a wonderful parent association from Aveiro, Portugal, and they did a great job. And then, so in total, the schools that are participating in the project, overall the 3 countries of implementation that are Sweden, Holland, and Portugal, are 12. The number of schools that we reached in the sense that received presentation, conferences, or where we teach, even that we did the first step of implementation, teaching the teachers of school, are 40. And the number of school and cluster of school interested in the implementing country are about 30. But we have new countries that would like to exploit, that would like to join, and that are Spain, France, Ireland, Germany, Latvia, Poland, Cyprus, Romania, and many more, where there are schools that are very much interested in expand. So our target, in terms of the target, were students aged from 10 to 18, end of secondary school, but this target was expanded under request often of the principal of the school, of the group of the cluster of schools, to the youngest children, and also from requests sometimes from the ministry. So we also taught children between 5 and 9. And our target specifically in this project, because it relates to radicalization, prevention of violence, and disadvantaged people, then are the schools with ethnic minority students and those with disadvantaged and migrant background. So how did we reach this target? In Portugal, we especially reached socially disadvantaged students. Our main implementing school in Algarve, in the south of Portugal, is part, in fact, of a national program from the Education Ministry that is called TAPE. It's a program for priority intervention for schools that are located in disadvantaged areas and that have children at risk of social exclusion. And actually, this was very interesting because it created a synergy between the national TAPE program and our Project Europe and the Quiet Time and Transcendental Meditation approach that was very positive. For instance, it gave greater visibility to the Europe project. The teacher of the school were invited to present our Quiet Time TM program in the National Conference of the TAPE schools in Portugal, but also on the second year of the project, our approach was included because of the results by the school as a measure in the improvement plan of the school within this TAPE program. And this means that all the other schools belonging to this program at national level could see the results and could decide also to use this as a tool for improving. And this brought actually other new schools, for instance, from Lisbona and Algarve region in our Europe project to implement. And at the end, so this addition of the Quiet Time improved the results also of the TAPE program. So we see that this school had committed within the TAPE program to have an improvement of the 70% and actually reached an improvement of 95%. In Sweden, we reach actually more the migrant and ethnic minority students. We have a welcome school for newly arrived migrants in Sweden. That is a school that welcomed the newly arrived migrant and just to prepare them to enter the Swedish system of education. And we had very good result there in terms of violence or discipline, but also of attention of I think of participation of students in the school. And we will have the principal of this school and one teacher of the school that was a great promoter of the project speaking in the moment of experience, of their experience. It just felt that it's very important, just at this stage, when just the migrant arrive in the country, to include a program for social integrations. And also, we had one of the most difficult schools in Sweden in terms of violence and academic results, what happened in the area of Malmö. Actually, this school came on the news as being really a difficult, very difficult school. And then our implementation team contacted it. And then the program started in some part of the school. And also there were very nice results. But actually, we had two small Montessori schools in Sweden. And that were actually, this school, as often happened with innovative school, a great percentage of students that could not easily integrate in the conventional education. And actually, these are the schools with the combination of quiet time included in this program. There were very, very good results. And it's interesting because these were the first school that opened the way to the other school in Sweden to start the program. So who innovate is more open also to new ideas and to innovation. And in Netherlands, actually, our target then had been dropout students. The school that is implementing in Holland is a school for students that have dropped out from other schools. And also we have as a school implementing school, a school of art in Utrecht. And there, the very interesting thing is that the project, the school was involved in the project by initiative of a student that was very eager to introduce the project in the school. And in Netherlands in general has been done a very great work connecting with many schools with difficult students and socially disadvantaged students. And really the first step of implementation will be starting in many schools, involving principal and leadership. So coming back to our some other features, some other partner of our project, we had as a main partner in the project the Teacher Training Center Ria Formosa. This is a public institution that offers courses for teachers. And the Teacher Training Center was actually directly representing in the project the Ministry of Education of Portugal, the Directorate General for Education. And that was, so what was doing this Teacher Training Center, that is a very interesting thing, I think, suggestion also in terms of policy. It was offering the courses, so Quiet Time Transcendental Meditation program, to school teachers and staff as professional training accredited to their careers. So basically, all the teacher and all the school teachers that learn and staff that learned in Portugal during our project were all trained through the Teacher Training Center. And actually, while doing so, the result also was very good because most of the teachers felt it from the self-assessment form very relevant for their career, very appropriate, and they gain a lot in their professional and private life. The Teacher Training Center also inspired other teacher training centers, for instance, in Lisbona and Aveiro and Algarve, to follow this same model. And also, as a result of this, there are now 90 teacher training centers in the whole Portugal that really are interested in offering this approach as a course accredited to the career of teachers. And this would facilitate the implementation of the program, at least doing the first step of the implementation. So another thing that is that this involvement Teacher Training Center created a close connection, involvement and update between the Directorate General of Education of the Ministry and the activity of the TAPE program. And so, and the activity of our project, Europe project. And so we had also a visit of the responsible to our implementing school in one of the partner meetings. And we really thank again Yvette to be with us. This is really the sign of the support of the ministry and the interest of the ministry for this project. Also, another interesting aspect is the involvement of parents. Parents are becoming very important in a motor in innovation for school. Who cares more for their children than parents? And so I think when parents like a program, it's because it's good. It's good for their children. And so, and there has been a strong involvement of parents in the project through a parent association, but also in general with Quiet Time program with Transcendental Meditation. We involve parents more and we promote the creation of a family association so that they are protagonists in the change. From basically during the project, there was growing interest coming from the implementation countries, but also from new countries. And this gave rise to a new project based on this approach, the Friends Project, which will scale up, which is basically scaling up in new countries, involving Italy, United Kingdom, and Belgium in the implementation. Extending also the implementation from school also to non-formal education, and expanding the target from 5-year-old children to adult education. And we have here with us all the partners of the Friends Project and also many schools and institutions that are participating in the Friends Project. So it's very nice to have all of you with us. And yes, just to point that in a way already indicate some vision about sustainability that come up from the project, and exactly is this idea of the teacher training center offering courses for teachers, school teachers, accredited for their career, that for sure will be an element of sustainability in Portugal, but could be also a suggestion for other countries to do. And then also, we are also already thinking to organize special courses for the school teachers to become Transcendental Meditation teacher for their school. So, thank you.
Thank you very much, Franz and Mirta, for this overview, and then we will have some experiences that come from these numbers. Mirta at the beginning said, I speak about numbers, but behind the numbers are a lot of experiences, and we will have the opportunity later on to have a view about that. But now I would like to invite Professor Ashley Dean, Professor of Education and Physics at the Maharishi University of Management. He visited more than 100 countries, more than 100, to support the knowledge and the implementation of the Transcendental Meditation. He will give us further information about what is Quiet Time with the Transcendental Meditation program within schools. So I give the stage to Professor Deans.
It's a great pleasure to be here to talk to you about the Europe project and the great progress that's been made. I'm going to talk a little bit about the rationale for the project. I'd like to start by saying that the FBI recently published a report, and this is 2018, and they said no single reason explains why people become violent extremists. But those who are emotionally upset after a stressful event may be vulnerable to recruitment. Now, that idea that a stressful event could be a precursor to violent radicalization is really very close to the truth. But how many people here in their lives have experienced emotional upset due to a stressful event? Everybody, yes. So the thing is that insight that they have is not very useful in terms of tracking down people who are potentially terrorists, because by that definition, we all are. The problem is that what they have not yet discovered is that it is possible to make the physiology resilient so that what is a stressful event to one person is not a stressful event to another person. So we need to look at the causes of stress and how to deal with stress. So the Quiet Time Transcendental Meditation program is a way to deal with stress and to make the children more resilient to stress. And we know, as we'll see in a moment, that stress actually damages the physiology. So we know that stress damages the brain, and we know that stress damages the physiology. So that what we need is a way to combat stress. And I'm going to be very confused here. Okay. So we need to decrease stress levels in education, because if you think of the logic, if stress damages the brain, then we need to have an educational system that does not create stress in the student, because education is supposed to develop the brain, not to damage the brain. So trying to develop an educational system that does not stress the student is, on the face of it, a big challenge, but we'll see actually there's a simple solution. So here are some of the students in the project in Portugal, and you see they don't look very stressed. And what they're doing is practicing transcendental meditation. So there may be people here who don't practice transcendental meditation, so I'll just take a moment to explain what is happening. Meditation has been part of human tradition since time immemorial, but it was in the late 1960s and early 1970s that Western science became interested in meditation. And the first paper on transcendental meditation was published in Science magazine by Dr. Keith Wallace in 1970. What had happened was in the late 1950s and early 1960s, Maharishi Mahesh Yogi brought this technology of consciousness, this transcendental meditation, from its ancient roots in India to the West. And since he was trained as a scientist at school, he knew that if something was beneficial, then scientists would want to study it. And this is what has happened. So since 1970, there have now been over 650 scientific studies on transcendental meditation. And there are many, many, many forms of meditation. And they all have different techniques. And the unique thing about transcendental meditation is that it is effortless, that it is natural. So let's look at this idea of a meditation technique being effortless. When people think of meditation, very often they're thinking that, oh, I can't do it because it involves concentration. So who can concentrate for a long period? Not many people. Certainly you couldn't go to a school and say, we want you to concentrate for 15 minutes. There would be a lot of upheaval in the classroom after 30 seconds. So firstly, it doesn't involve concentration. It doesn't involve contemplation. Contemplation means we think about something, or we're witnessing our thoughts, or witnessing ideas. And contemplation may have some value in creating a mood. So if we sit and we think of the ocean, or we think of beautiful mountains with edelweiss, etc., that may have some effect. But that's not transcendental meditation. Transcendental meditation has this word transcendental in front of it, because transcendental means to go beyond. So you go beyond thinking, go beyond thought to the source of thinking. And at the source of thinking is this field of pure silence, pure consciousness, we call it. Why does the mind go to that area in transcendental meditation? Because the nature of the human mind is to always be moving towards more fulfillment. If you think about it, when you get up in the morning, nobody gets up in the morning and says, yesterday was awful, I hope today is going to be worse. That is not the human condition. We wake up optimistic that something good is going to happen today because our mind is always looking for something more fulfilling. Now, we can find fulfillment outside of ourselves. So we have many things that people do in our society. They go to sports events, they go to the cinema, they play games on the internet, they have their family, they have all of these things that bring them fulfillment. But actually, deep within all of us is a field of pure fulfillment. At the source of thinking is a field of, we could call it blissfulness, charming. The source of all of our happiness actually turns out to be within us. So transcendental meditation makes use of the nature of the human mind to go to more fulfilling areas of life by allowing us to turn our attention inward, and then the mind spontaneously goes within to that source of happiness which is already within us. So we've grown up in our society always focusing outwards. You know, at school we were looking at books, we were looking at the internet, everything was involved in gaining knowledge, or as Fabrizio said, exploring outside of ourselves. So science began. Why? Because people wanted to explore the material universe and go deeper, deeper, molecular level, atomic level, nuclear level. Now, science has glimpsed this field of unity at the basis of the physical universe. We hear so much about unified quantum field theories today. But very little attention was put on exploring within. And so transcendental meditation allows the mind to dive deeply within and explore finer levels of awareness. Transcendental meditation is also natural. It's natural because it does not involve concentration, and it does not involve contemplation. It makes use of the natural tendency of the mind to experience fields of more or more bliss. So, given the right technique, the mind dives within like a bee to nectar, just automatically because those subtler levels of thinking are more blissful and more charming. So, here's a diagram that illustrates this. So this is the surface thinking level of the mind. So this is making an analogy between an ocean and the mind. You see on the surface of the ocean, there are waves. This is like the thoughts that we have on the surface level of the mind. All day long, we're having thoughts. The mind is active. In transcendental meditation, we take a thought, experience that thought at finer levels in the development of the thought. This happens spontaneously. And we experience that at the source of thought is this field of silence, this field of transcendental consciousness. Just like with an ocean, you can be tossed around on the surface of the ocean by all of these huge waves, which are happening all the time. But if you dive deep into the ocean, you find that underlying the dynamism on the surface is always a field of silence. You can have a hurricane go by up here with huge waves, but down here, it's always silent. And that is what has been missed from society, that we have this field of dynamic silence within us. Now, I say dynamic silence because you might think, well, silence doesn't, it might be nice, but it doesn't sound very useful. It's rather like a bow and arrow. You can have different types of silence. You can put the arrow on the bow, and it's silent, but it's not dynamic silence. In order to get dynamic silence, you have to pull the arrow back on the bow. Now it's still silent, but now it's full of potential. And when you let go, then it can fly far. So the students who are practicing Transcendental Meditation, what they're doing is the mind dives within to this field of dynamic silence, which is the source of their creativity and intelligence. So when they come out of meditation, as you'll see from the results this afternoon, they're much more creative, much more intelligent, much calmer because they have this silence which is established in their awareness. So just to make this point again, so here is our system of education today, how we all grew up. We used to focus on books. Today they focus on the internet. It's the same thing. The attention is directed outwards to the knowledge. And this has created huge progress in society. What modern education has developed is the ability to control and manipulate the physical universe, to gain deeper insights into the laws of nature. But what has been missing is the development of the student. So to give you an example, it's estimated today that in the United States, where the progress in the material level, like in Europe, is at the cutting edge, that more than 50% of adult population are taking prescription drugs to deal with mental problems like insomnia and anxiety and depression and all of these different things, that the progress on the outside has not been matched by progress on the inside. And this is the missing link that Transcendental Meditation fulfills. So the need is, I should have mentioned, sorry, I just meant to say this. If we want to develop the student, then what is the thing in the physiology that determines our behavior? We could say everything depends on the functioning of the brain. If the brain, if we're in a very sleepy state of consciousness, then we're not going to see things very clearly. We could be dreaming, in which case we don't see anything clearly. We see a completely illusory universe. And we experience the waking state of consciousness, where, again, if we're sleepy, we don't have such a good day. If we're wide awake and alert, the day goes better. So what Maharishi pointed out was that the human being can experience different states of consciousness. Sleeping state of consciousness we've all experienced. Dreaming state of consciousness. Hopefully everyone here is now in the waking state. In the back row, we'll have a look. Those are 3 states of consciousness. But what Dr. Wallace's paper in 1970 pointed out is that there is actually a 4th major state of human consciousness, completely different from waking, sleeping, and dreaming. Because this 4th state of consciousness is described as a state of restful alertness, just like the arrow pulled back on the bow. So when you're practicing Transcendental Meditation, because mind and body are intimately related, as the mental activity settles down to this state of inner silence, the physiology settles down to a deep level of rest and relaxation. And in that deep level of rest and relaxation, the body is able to repair damage that has been caused by overload of stress. So deep rest is a very important factor in this technique. At the same time, the mind is fully alert. So it's completely different to sleep. So in restful alertness, you have rest in the body and alertness in the mind. And we'll see in a moment what happens to the brain of the student when they're practicing Transcendental Meditation. So this is the next part. So we've talked about the need to combat stress. Transcendental Meditation, as you'll see in the research presented later, is the most effective way of reducing the harmful side effects of stress. It's simple, it's natural, it's effortless, and it's effective. But we also want to optimize brain functioning. So let's look at the human brain. Essentially, this is a very simple outlook. There are 2 parts to the brain. There's the part of the brain we could call the impulsive brain or the animal brain. This is the part of the brain that we have in common with animals. So we have, the visual cortex and the motor cortex and the cerebellum all in common. What is the big difference between us and an animal? It's that we have this fully developed prefrontal cortex. This is the thinking brain. So if you have a brain where the prefrontal cortex is not fully developed, then you may not have good impulse control. You may act on impulse, and many, many acts of violence occur because of lack of impulse control. And you can lose impulse control by interfering with the prefrontal cortex. For example, if you have someone who drinks alcohol, alcohol suppresses the activity of the prefrontal cortex, and that's why so many crimes and acts of violence are related to alcohol consumption. So this is the prefrontal cortex, the humanity that we have, responsible for, as I mentioned, impulse control. It's responsible for long-term planning, something animals don't do very much. So you've never seen a cow packing a suitcase and planning a holiday. They can't do that, but we can. Concentration, working memory, emotional stability, it's also in the prefrontal cortex. Learning ability, self-awareness, and very importantly for our topic today, ethical thinking, moral reasoning. It's here. And we know this from neuroscience because people who've had damage to the prefrontal cortex, they lose these abilities. So it'd be very important to have some technology that could develop the prefrontal cortex. So here's Dr. Fred Travis, director of the Center of Brain, Consciousness, and Cognition. And here he's looking at the functioning of the brain with the electroencephalograph. And I'd like to show you now a very 2-minute brief movie of what happens when you learn Transcendental Meditation to your prefrontal cortex. Something very concrete. So what we find in this program then is we can add a missing element to education. Because if you're a teacher in the classroom, you take the students that the parents provide you with, and then you use all of your skill to try to develop them. But if you don't have a way of developing the coherent functioning of the student's brain, teaching is always a big challenge. When you have a technology to make the brain coherent, teaching becomes absolutely blissful. Yes, please. So we could call the prefrontal cortex the executive brain. It's the chief executive officer of the brain. It governs all of the other parts of the brain if it's working properly. So this is the left side of the prefrontal cortex. This is the right side of the prefrontal cortex. You're looking here at the electrical activity. This is a few microvolts measured by the leads of the electroencephalogram. And here you see there's a certain amplitude. And so you have many millions of cells functioning. And all of the electrical impulses are adding together to give you this very noisy output. So here is the right side of the prefrontal cortex. And here we're looking at a measure of the coherence, which means the degree of communication between the left and right sides of the prefrontal cortex. And you see it goes from up and down from basically 100% here. Here's 100% coherence, down to very near to zero coherence. So it's very incoherent, that's what I say. Now the person is asked to begin Transcendental Meditation. They're sitting here with their eyes closed now. So here they are, sitting with eyes closed. You don't see any change. And then this is where they begin Transcendental Meditation. So what you're seeing here is locally, the cells, the neurons are firing coherently together, giving you a much larger amplitude. And the same thing on the right. But very interestingly, you now see that the coherence between the left and the right has increased to about 100%. So you're looking at a completely unique style of brain functioning where you have perfect communication between different areas of the brain. Now here we're only looking at the prefrontal cortex, but it's very striking. So the child, or the student, or the adult, they practice Transcendental Meditation for 15 to 20 minutes, and then they come out of meditation, and this coherence persists in their activity. And then later in the afternoon, they meditate again, the brain becomes coherent, then they have their activity in the evening. The next day, they meditate again, they have their activity. And the brain is so flexible that over time, the high coherence is maintained even when you're not meditating. And that's when it's really useful. I mean, it would be one thing if your brain was coherent in meditation, great, but if it was incoherent later on, it wouldn't be so good. You want the coherence to continue. So we'll look at the next slide. So I'm going to show you now what the whole brain looks like. We just saw between the left and right prefrontal cortex. This is from the Journal of Psychophysiology and the International Journal of Neuroscience. This is with eyes open, looking at the coherence between different areas of the brain. And you see, every time the coherence rises above a certain threshold, the computer draws a line between those two areas of the brain. So with eyes open, you don't see very much. With eyes closed, you see a little bit more at the back of the brain because it's resting. This is the occipital cortex. But during transcendental meditation, you see a completely holistic style of brain functioning. Every area of the brain is communicating with every other area of the brain, and in particular, the connections between the prefrontal cortex and the animal brain are being strengthened. So the chief executive officer is now taking control of the brain, and that means all of these higher human values, like impulse control, ethical thinking, moral reasoning, are starting to grow in the life of the individual. So suddenly you start to find, as you saw from that report of Maharishi School in Britain, that suddenly the children start to behave in the way that you want them to behave, to grow into good citizens. You don't have to keep telling them how to behave. Every teacher knows that if you keep telling children you have to behave like this, you have to behave like this, as soon as you turn your back, you'll find they're not behaving like this. Because intellectual understanding of morality is not enough. It has to come spontaneously from the proper functioning of the brain itself. So we saw from that last slide, it seems from the research we could say today that it's only the experience of transcendental consciousness that enlivens total brain functioning. This is an amazing discovery. Everything we do changes our brain. Everything you eat changes your brain. If you play football, it changes your brain. That's why footballers practice 8 hours a day. If you play the violin, it changes your brain. If you study mathematics, it changes your brain. All of these things change your brain, but they tend to only develop parts of the brain. So a footballer who's always practicing, trying to get better with their left foot, is developing the motor cortex here that governs the left foot. A violinist is developing the motor cortex that moves the fingers of the left hand. But that's not enough. You have to have something that develops the whole brain, and the great shock, if you like, the great discovery is that what develops the whole brain? The experience of pure consciousness, the experience of silence, the one thing that they never gave us at school. Right? They gave us mathematics, they gave us sports, they gave us philosophy, they gave us ethics, they gave us music, they gave absolutely everything except the experience of pure consciousness. But ironically, it's only the experience of transcendental consciousness that develops the whole brain. This is why now education, the future of education is so bright, because now we have a way of every child, irrespective of their intelligence, irrespective of their religion, irrespective of their abilities, every child, without exception, can do this. So this is just to give you an insight into the benefits of having a brain that is highly coherent. Many randomized control studies have shown that higher brain coherence leads to many beautiful qualities. For example, greater self-awareness is correlated with higher brain coherence. Greater inner orientation, improved neurological efficiency, increased moral reasoning ability, increased creativity, increased intelligence, better marks in school, increased emotional subtlety, better, much lower trait anxiety and state anxiety, and decreased neuroticism. So it's rather like watering the root of a tree. If we look on education as bearing all these fruits, we're trying to polish this fruit, and we're trying to polish this fruit and polish this fruit. Now we understand how to develop every fruit, and that is we water the root. And watering the root in this context means developing higher brain coherence in the student, and then they become spontaneously better at everything. And that's what we see in so much of the research. If you're a mathematics teacher, what you'll find is that when the children learn Transcendental Meditation, their brain becomes more coherent, they spontaneously become better at mathematics. They spontaneously learn languages better. They spontaneously begin to behave better. So this is really the key. It should be added to every school as just part of the routine of the school day. So here are some students. Again, this is our project in Portugal. You see a wide variety of students, but this is actually quite an amazing thing that you can get students who are 12 years old to gladly sit quietly for 12 to 15 minutes. I was so impressed when I visited the school. I got there about 8:20 in the morning. School starts at 8:30. There were lots of children running around in the playground, and went up to a classroom, so I was going to visit the first class, and already the students were lined up outside. They didn't want to miss their meditation. It was really an amazing experience. This is the school in Holland, and this is school in Sweden. So now, as we mentioned, as Myrta mentioned, it's expanding. So this is a great innovation, a great support from the European Commission, and something that is going to eradicate the problems associated with social inclusion. So let me just read a little section here from a professor in the United States at Indiana University. He says, repeated exposure to stress can result in long-term damage to the brain's frontal cortex that we don't want. This frontal lobe damage could lead to a situation where the brain is damaged so badly that the individual becomes at risk for terrorism without the human emotions of pity or remorse. So now we can avoid that. It's not that we have to look for a needle in a haystack and say, oh, this person is at danger of radicalization and this person is not. Now we can essentially inoculate the whole society against the harmful effects of stress. As the World Health Organization said, we're living in an ocean of stress. Stress is the modern plague. It's damaging the human physiologies all over the world, and our children are drowning in stress. So now we have a simple antidote to stress that will make the future of education very bright. Thank you very much.
I really thank Ashley for this deep explanation on Transcendental Meditation, also from the scientific neurological point of view, which is very important. And looking at the agenda, we are a little bit late. And now we have these experiences from the school directly involved in the project. And as Ashley said, we also use during the project lifetime to measure the results. And so we have also this monitoring. The experiences are related also to the monitoring of the effect of the impact of the technique that we applied. And so I suggest now to have a break, a coffee break, and then start with the panel with experiences, and after that the evaluation of the impact related to the experiences that we will see. So let's have a coffee break now for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, no more, and we start again with the experience. Thank you.